You're probably asking yourself, how come a questionable paper was initially published in a scientific journal? Then how come it was retracted and rapidly? And on top of that, how come following minor modifications, the same paper with the same conclusions was republished in another scientific journal? We begin with the journal Frontiers in Public Health, the journal which initially published our paper titled Pilot Comparative Study on the Health of Vaccinated and Unvaccinated 6 to 12-year-old U.S. children. With the growing plethora of open access journals, it is becoming a necessity to assess their credibility. The incentive is clear for entrepreneurs. Researchers pay up to $5,000 to publish in some open access journals. Academic entrepreneurs have seen the opportunity. A good case in point is the journal Frontiers in Public Health, which initially published the Mawson paper. It belongs to Swiss academics who now oversee hundreds of open source journals. And several articles of Professor Mawson, author of the retracted paper Pilot Comparative Study on the Health of Vaccinated and Unvaccinated 6 to 12-year-old U.S. children, have ended up in the Journal of Translational Science. It is published by the open access publisher OA Text. There is no foolproof, universally accepted way of evaluating the credentials of an open access science journal, but being listed in the directory of open access journals is a minimum. If we do a quick check for the Journal of Translational Science in the directory of open access journal, we find out there is no Journal of Translational Science listed. Again, there is no sure way to evaluate the scientific credentials of a scientific journal, but papers from the Journal of Translational Science should certainly be treated with caution. The world of open access journals is a real jungle, but there are several resources on the web that you can access to find out about these journals. Some are very well established, like the Web of Science, and then there is PubMed, and you can access more specialized websites like Clarivate Analytics, Journal Master List, Sherpa Romeo, or the directory of open access journals that we saw earlier, and then there is the Omics Open Access Journals. Is there a quick way to assess a scientific journal? Yes. You can type the name of the journal in Simago's Journal and Country Rank, or you can ask a librarian. This is the opportunity to introduce librarians, a great resource often accessible through the internet. If you visit the website of a library, look for the little banner Ask a Librarian. You can often contact them directly and rapidly. More on the next slide about Simago. If you want to find out by yourself, check the citation index by typing the name of the journal in Journal Search of Clarivate Analytics, the new home for the Web of Science previously owned by Reuters Thomson. You can also check the following websites: Google Citation Matrix, Sherpa Romeo, and the same resources of the previous slide. But here I would like to insist on this killer app, which is provided by Simago's Journal and Country Rank. It ranks journals according to hundreds of disciplines. If you select immunology, it ranks 196 journals as of August 2017. And neither Frontiers in Public Health nor the Journal of Translational Science are listed there. Using ranking systems to rank a scientific journal is using brute force. If you want to understand why a journal is highly respected, you check if it implements a peer review process. It is a key criteria for the credibility of a scientific journal. Peer-reviewed journals submit each article to the critique of several experts in the same field, and they do this before publication. Once you have found the journal in one of the ranking resources listed in the previous slides, you can check if it says something about the journal implementing peer review. And as you might guess, the article Pilot Comparative Study on the Health of Vaccinated and Unvaccinated 6 to 12-year-old US Children is such an extreme case. It has so many flaws and its conclusions are so contrary to the scientific consensus that the probability that it will survive peer review is very unlikely. Therefore, the fact that it was published in the Journal of Translational Science says something about the journal. That journal claims it has a comprehensive peer review policy, but if you have access to this resource, the Ulrich Periodicals Directory, you will see there that it says that the journal doesn't implement peer review. Another key criteria for the credibility and prestige of a scientific journal is the citation index. It's the number of times its articles are quoted or cited by other scientists. Google Scholar provides a version of the citation index. It's called the H5 index, and it looks at citations over the last 5 years. And if you check for the journal Frontiers in Public Health, it has an H5 index of 28, which looks not that bad, but the New England Journal of Medicine has an H5 index of 352. And if you check for the Journal of Translational Science, it is not listed in Google Scholar. By now you have discovered that even if a paper has many faults and has been retracted, it can find a new home. So beware, as a science journalist, you should know that discredited research still lives on the internet. In the next module, we finally looked at controversial scientists.